Imagine, like, just for a second, that you are dying of thirst. You're standing right next to this massive communal well, and it is just brimming with clean, cool water.
Hmm.
But, with absolute certainty that if you so much as let your fingers brush the stone wall of that well, you will be violently beaten.
Right.
Or, maybe even killed.
Yeah, it is a terrifying scenario.
Yeah.
And it really, it completely shatters how we usually think about our relationship with the natural world.
Right, because, when you hear the word environmentalism, your brain probably jumps to a very specific, almost comforting set of images.
Yeah, like saving the whales. Or
Exactly, saving the rainforest, maybe reducing your carbon footprint, or, I don't know, hiking through some pristine, untouched national park.
Mm-hmm.
There is this baked-in assumption for a lot of us that nature is a neutral space, like a sanctuary away from human problems and human politics.
But what the sources we're looking at today reveal is that, well, for millions of people, that sanctuary is a total illusion.
Yeah.
The environment isn't a neutral space at all. It's this highly engineered, rigid landscape where your very right to exist or drink water or even walk on certain soil is dictated by an ancient social hierarchy.
And that is the mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a radically different kind of ecology.
We really are.
We're guided by this fascinating paper by Dr. Jasvantkumar V. Rathod titled Dalit Environmental Ethics in Joothan and Karukku. Through this research, we're looking at how access to the natural world in India is heavily governed by the caste system.
Yeah, and to really set the stage here, we need to understand that in Dalit literature, you're not going to find like abstract ecological idealism.
Right.
You aren't going to read about the aesthetic beauty of a sunset over an untouched valley because, well, aesthetic detachment is a privilege.
Wow, yeah, that's a great point.
Instead, the focus is squarely on survival, on human dignity, and on social justice. The environment is a lived, intensely unequal space. And Dr. Rathod's paper grounds this analysis in two foundational autobiographical texts.
And these are lived, visceral experiences we are talking about, not just theoretical essays.
Exactly. First, we have Omprakash Valmiki's Joothan, published in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
This text details the North Indian Dalit experience, specifically the Chura community in post-independence Uttar Pradesh.
Right, up north.
Yeah. And then, offering a different but incredibly parallel perspective, we have Bama's Karukku from 1992. This book focuses on the Tamil Dalit Christian experience in rural Tamil Nadu down in South India.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through this research, it fundamentally shifts the very definition of nature.
It really is.
We are moving away from this idea of, sitting back and admiring a landscape painting to viewing the environment as a site of intense everyday struggle.
That shift is the absolute core of what Dr. Rathod calls environmental casteism.
Environmental casteism.
Yeah, and to really grasp how this works, we have to look at the philosophy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He defined the caste system not just as a simple division of labor, but as a system of graded inequality.
Graded inequality. I want to make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. How does that actually work in practice?
So think of it like a massive social ladder. It's not just two groups, the oppressors and the oppressed.
Okay.
It's a multi-tiered system where almost everyone has a group above them to revere and a group below them to despise and control.
Man.
And this structure prevents solidarity among the lower rungs. In the Indian context, the upper castes at the very top of this ladder have historically governed access to land and water. They control the sanitation spaces. They control the agricultural labor.
So they control everything.
Right. So the environment itself is a socially produced ecology.
So it's like thinking of the environment not as an open national park that anyone can wander into, but as a heavily gated community.
Oh, I like that.
And the locks on the gates aren't physical chains or security guards. They are deeply ingrained social rules that dictate exactly who gets to step on the grass, who gets to drink from the fountain, and who has to haul away the trash.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. The physical environment is weaponized to enforce the social order.
Jeez.
And this brings in a point from scholar K. Satyanarayana, which the paper highlights. He argues that Dalit literature isn't merely a cultural representation or, a story being told for entertainment.
Right, it's not fiction.
Exactly. It was a sharp, unyielding critique of material conditions. It's about the physical reality of landlessness. It's about spatial segregation in the village.
So it's treating literature as a form of undeniable testimony.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how Dalit literary theory entirely rejects the idea of art for art's sake. Literature is an ethical intervention. The paper brings up theorist Sharankumar Limbale, who notes that this writing is explicitly associated with a movement to bring about tangible physical change.
So it's writing as a form of survival and resistance.
Yes, absolutely.
So if we are talking about nature as this gated community where access is tightly controlled, I want to zoom in on the most essential gate-kept resource of all.
Let me guess. Water.
Water. In these texts, water isn't just something you drink to stay hydrated. It becomes a site of intense, daily humiliation.
It really does.
Yeah.
And what is so striking when you read both of these accounts is how consistent the mechanics of this oppression are across vastly different regions of the country.
Yeah, that blew my mind. You have Valmiki up in the north dealing with these public wells, and then you have Bama down in the south dealing with communal water tanks.
Right.
Different geographies, totally different climates, but the exact same mechanism of control. There's this quote from Valmiki in Joothan that just stops you in your tracks. He writes, "The wells were there, but they were not for us. We were not allowed to draw water from them."
And it goes far beyond just being told, like, no, you can't use this.
Yeah.
The daily reality of gaining access to water was designed to be deeply degrading.
Yeah.
Valmiki described how Dalits couldn't touch the well or the drawing ropes. They had to wait, sometimes for hours in the heat, for someone from the upper castes to come along.
That's just...
And then the upper caste person would physically pour water for them from a height, making sure their vessels never touched. The text literally describes Dalits as being treated as untouchable even to water.
untouchable even to water. That phrase is haunting.
It really is.
And Bama echoes this exact same reality in Karukku. She notes that even when they were absolutely parched, coming back from exhausting labor in the fields, they had to stand there and wait until everyone else had finished drawing water before they could even hope to get a drop.
Just brutal.
So what does this all mean? This clearly isn't about physical water scarcity, right? It's not like the well is dry and there isn't enough to go around. It's an engineered scarcity.
That is a crucial distinction. It is an artificial, socially constructed scarcity designed purely to maintain power.
Right.
To understand the mechanics of how this works, the paper introduces a concept from scholar Aniket Jaiwar from his book Practicing Caste. Jaiwar argues that caste operates through regimes of bodily regulation and sensory discipline.
Sensory discipline, meaning literally controlling what your senses are allowed to interact with, like controlling what you can physically touch.
Precisely. Forbidding Dalits to touch water sources isn't about protecting the water from physical dirt.
Okay.
It is a strict governance of proximity and touch. It turns the most basic ecological necessity, hydration, into an instrument of caste discipline.
Wow.
By controlling who can touch the water, the social hierarchy asserts absolute authority over the physical bodies of the marginalized.
It's like living within an invisible electric fence.
Yes.
The physical resource you need to survive is right there in front of you. But the social conditioning shocks you, sometimes lethally, if you even reach for it.
Exactly.
It turns your own basic bodily need for a drink of water into a weapon that is used to keep you in your place.
And that invisible fence dictates every movement within the village. Which brings us to a massive contradiction in this whole system.
Oh yeah, the purity paradox.
Right. We've just explored how water is kept supposedly pure by violently excluding Dalits from touching it. But the paper then pivots to look at the geography of the village itself and who is actually forced to do the impure work of maintaining that environment.
Right, because if you are kept away from the clean spaces, where are you forced to live?
Exactly.
Valmiki shares these vivid childhood memories of the Dalit habitation, which is called the Basti. It wasn't just another neighborhood down the street.
No, not at all.
It was physically marginalized, pushed to the absolute edge of the village, usually downwind, and surrounded by filth and stench.
This is where the spatial segregation becomes impossible to ignore. The physical layout of the village is a map of its social inequalities.
And the environmental harm here isn't some abstract concept like global warming 100 years from now.
No, it's immediate.
It is experienced physically on the skin right now through hunger, thirst, and dirt. The paper references scholar Anupama Rao, who points out that the Dalit body is the exact site where social violence and material violence intersect. The social hatred translates directly into material deprivation.
And this exposes the ultimate hypocrisy of the caste system, which Valmiki breaks down so brilliantly. The overarching ideological narrative used by the upper castes is that Dalits are inherently impure or polluting. Yet they are the ones forced by this exact same system to do the crucial ecological labor of the village.
Right.
They're forced to clean the latrines, sweep the streets, and remove the rotting animal carcasses.
Yes. There's that incredibly powerful quote from Valmiki where he realizes this paradox. He says, "We carried the dead animals away so the village could remain pure."
It's just devastating.
It's like, if we go back to that gated community analogy, it's not just that you're locked out, it's that you are forced to do all the grueling, messy maintenance that keeps the community beautiful.
Yeah.
You clear the sewage, you take out the garbage, but the moment you try to take a sip from the water fountain you just cleaned, you are told your very existence is too dirty to be allowed near it.
Exactly.
The stigma of the work is permanently attached to you, while the people who actually produce the waste get to claim purity.
That captures the ideological trick perfectly. It highlights the invisible, deeply stigmatized labor that maintains the illusion of a pristine environment for the privileged.
And doing that labor, living in that marginal space, it takes a heavy physical toll over a lifetime. The paper connects this to Rob Nixon's concept of slow violence.
Yes, slow violence.
When we typically think of environmental violence, we think of an explosive event, right? Like a chemical plant explosion or a catastrophic flood.
Sure.
But Valmiki, describing walking to school hungry and barefoot through the burning dust, that isn't a single headline-grabbing catastrophe. That is a gradual, grinding ecological injustice applied day after day, generation after generation.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this lived reality completely dismantles the ideology of purity. The paper brings in the environmental philosopher Val Plumwood.
Okay.
She argues that a true ethical ecology has to completely dismantle these pure and impure dualisms.
Hold on, let me translate that for a second. Dismantling pure and impure dualisms. Basically what she's saying is that pure and dirty aren't actual facts of nature.
Right.
They are just arbitrary labels invented by the people in charge to keep everyone else in their place. Right?
Yeah, you've nailed it. What Valmiki and Bama show us through their lived experiences is that these concepts of pure and polluted have absolutely nothing to do with nature or actual hygiene.
Wow.
They are entirely based on social power. Impurity is located within the power structure, not within the natural world.
So we've looked at the broad community's labor and how the village is physically structured. But Dr. Rathod's deep dive narrows the lens even further.
It does.
It focuses on the most vulnerable group within this oppressive system, introducing a crucial layer of intersectionality by focusing specifically on Dalit women.
Yes, because to truly understand this environmental ethic, you really cannot treat the Dalit community as a single monolith. The experience of this environment is deeply gendered.
Let's start with their physical connection to the land. Bama provides this incredible visceral portrayal of landless Dalit agricultural workers. Now, these workers don't own the land. Legally, they have absolutely no claim to it. But they have this profound bodily connection to the soil. Bama writes, "The soil stuck to our bodies, our clothes, our hair. It was part of us."
Which highlights a terrifying vulnerability. If the monsoon rains fail and the crops dry up, it's not the absentee upper-caste landowner living in a concrete house who starves first.
Right.
It is the landless Dalits whose very survival is tied directly to the soil they work but do not own. This is what the paper refers to as eco-precarity, a state of constant ecological precariousness.
And this eco-precarity falls disproportionately on the shoulders of the women.
Without a doubt. The paper brings in scholar Shalaja Pike, who makes a vital point. Sanitation and hygiene aren't just general arenas of caste domination. They are specific arenas of domination for women.
Oh, I see.
Bama points out in Karukku that it is the women who have to walk the miles in the heat to carry the water. It is the women who are bending over the fields all day under the sun.
Yeah.
It is the women who are expected to forage for fuel and, as she puts it, somehow made a meal out of nothing.
Hi, I'm trying to wrap my head around the daily reality of this. So a Dalit woman is bearing the brunt of the physical labor in the fields. She's the one navigating the humiliation of fetching the water.
Yes.
She's facing immense oppression from the outside world. But when she finally gets back to the basti, to her own home, is that a sanctuary? Or is she facing oppression from within her own community as well?
Tragically, the home is often not a sanctuary. This is where intersectionality is so vital to the analysis. The paper cites Dalit feminist critic Sharmila Rage. Multiple patriarchies.
Multiple patriarchies, meaning it comes from all sides.
Exactly. A Dalit woman doesn't just face oppression from the upper castes or from society at large. She also faces patriarchal oppression from Dalit men inside her own home.
Wow.
The Dalit man, who is stripped of power and humiliated in the outside world, well, he often exerts the only power he has left within the household. She is fighting battles on every conceivable front.
That is just an overwhelming, crushing burden.
Yeah.
To be the foundation of survival for your family, but to be punished for it both outside and inside the home.
And to compound that injustice, the paper ties this into Maria Mies's foundational work on ecofeminism.
Oh, hey, ecofeminism.
Yeah. Mies explains that a woman's ecological labor, fetching the water, foraging for firewood, making scarce food stretch to feed a family, is almost entirely devalued by broader society.
Because it's unpaid.
Basically.
Yeah.
Because it is associated with mere daily survival rather than generating capitalist profit. And in the case of the Dalit woman, that systemic devaluation is heavily intensified by her caste. Her labor is the only thing keeping the community alive, yet it is rendered entirely invisible and worthless by the dominant culture.
Hearing all of this, the sheer physical exhaustion, the invisible electric fences governing touch, the grinding, slow violence of just trying to survive, you naturally start to wonder, is there any way out?
It's the logical next question.
Right. If the physical environment and the social structures are this deeply violently oppressive, how does someone escape? And the paper explores this through a really surprising lens, institutional religion.
This is a crucial part of the analysis, particularly when we look at Bama's work.
Right, because this was one of the most unexpected parts of Karukku for me. Bama is a Tamil Dalit Christian. Now, a lot of people might assume that converting to a religion like Christianity, which preaches equality before God and love thy neighbor, would offer an escape route from the rigid hierarchy of the caste system.
You would think so.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It didn't. Bama writes this devastating line, "Our lives did not change just because we prayed to a different God."
It's a profound, heartbreaking disillusionment. She reveals that even inside the church, the space that was supposed to be the ultimate spiritual sanctuary, the social environment was exactly the same.
Really? Even inside the church?
Even there were places in the church they couldn't sit, there were sacred items they couldn't touch, the caste lines were drawn right down the middle of the pews.
But how does that happen? How does a completely different religious framework just absorb that kind of brutal hierarchy?
Because institutions, no matter their theology, are run by people.
Yeah, that's true.
And those people are deeply embedded in the local culture and economy. Christian institutions in these rural areas simply replicated the existing sociology of the environment.
Wow.
They managed the agricultural land, the schools, and the resources with the exact same exclusions. The prayers might have changed, but the material reality of who controlled the environment and who did the grueling labor did not change one bit.
Which brings in Dr. Ambedkar's historical perspective again, right?
Yeah.
Because he saw this exact problem coming.
He did. The paper notes that back in 1950, Dr. Ambedkar argued that Buddhism was the only religion suitable for a modern, scientific society striving for justice.
Okay, why Buddhism specifically?
Well, his reasoning was deeply practical, not just spiritual. He said Buddhism combines three essential principles: prajna, which means critical understanding as opposed to blind superstition,
Right.
karuna, which is deep compassion and love, and samatha, which is absolute equality. He didn't see these as just abstract goals for the afterlife. He saw them as necessary, practical tools for dismantling the material inequalities of caste in the here and now.
And we see that search for critical understanding, that prajna, in Valmiki's journey in Joothan, too.
Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't a religious conversion that saved him, but an educational awakening. He describes this pivotal moment where education helped him see his reality clearly. He realized that his misery was, and I quote, "not fate but injustice."
That phrasing changes everything. Not fate, but injustice.
It really does.
Because the ideological power of the caste system relies on convincing the oppressed that their suffering is just karma or a divine decree based on their inherent lack of purity.
Right. If you think you deserve it, you don't fight it.
Exactly. As long as you believe it's fate, you accept it.
Yeah.
The exact moment you realize it is a constructed, engineered injustice, ethical resistance becomes possible. You stop blaming yourself and start challenging the structure.
And that resistance, that challenging of the structure, is exactly what these two texts represent.
For sure.
So looking at all of this incredible material, the big takeaway from Dr. Rathod's paper is that Valmiki and Bama force us to fundamentally redefine the environmental humanities.
They really do.
We cannot just talk about conservationist paradigms anymore. We can't just talk about planting trees or keeping rivers visually clean while completely ignoring the humans living and suffering in that ecosystem.
Dalit environmental ethics demand a complete paradigm shift from all of us. We have to prioritize human access over mere ecological preservation. We have to prioritize human dignity over abstract notions of environmental purity.
Because if a river is beautifully preserved, but a whole community of people isn't allowed to drink from it without facing violence, whose environment are we actually saving?
This raises an important question for all future ecological study. It reminds us that true ecology must be examined intersectionally. You simply cannot separate the physical environment from caste, from class, and from gender. They are all pulling the exact same levers of power, determining who gets to thrive and who is forced merely to survive.
It totally changes the way you look at the world around you. You can't unsee the invisible fences once you know they are there.
You really can't.
So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. The next time you hear a political debate about protecting the environment, or you see a campaign about keeping a public space pure and clean, take a step back and ask yourself a slightly different set of questions.
Yep.
Who holds the power to define what pure even means in this context? And perhaps more importantly, whose invisible, uncredited, and heavily stigmatized labor is being exploited every single day to keep it that way?